The Duke of Blackthorn knew he had returned too late when no one came down the steps to greet him. Not his wife, not the steward, not even old Mrs. Vell, who had served the family so long, that she had once corrected his father's posture in front of a bishop and survived it. Only a young footman stood beneath the portico, holding a lantern, though the evening was not yet dark. That was the first insult. The second was the sound coming from the house. Voices, many voices, laughter, glass, music. Blackthorn Hall was entertaining. Edmund Vale, Duke of Blackthorn, sat in the carriage a moment longer than necessary and looked through the rain-speckled glass at the glowing windows of his own house. He had not been informed of a house party, or perhaps he had. Letters had followed him through Bath, Brighton, and finally Lord Evering's hunting lodge in Kent, where Miss Tamsin Rowe had complained that country rain made her curls collapse and asked whether duchesses were always so persistent in writing. Edmund had laughed then. He did not laugh now. Beside him, his valet shifted uneasily. "Your Grace?" Edmund opened the carriage door himself. The gravel was newly laid. He noticed it at once. It had been dark grey when he left in April. Now it was pale, clean, almost white, raked into perfect lines that curved toward the entrance like a procession. The old cracked fountain beside the west lawn had been removed. The dead ivy had been stripped from the stone. Lamps burned in every lower window. The house looked awake. He disliked that. A house should not appear more alive in its master's absence. The footman bowed. "Your Grace." Edmund handed him his gloves. "Where is her Grace?" "In the drawing-room, Your Grace." "With guests?" "Yes, Your Grace." "What guests?" The footman's face remained blank, in the trained manner of servants, who had been told that honesty could be postponed by posture. "Her Grace's guests, Your Grace." Edmund looked as your name. "Calder, Your Grace. I do not know you." "No, Your Grace." A third insult. He stepped into the hall. The smell struck him first. Fresh polish, orange peel, roses, candle wax, and no trace of cigar smoke. His cigar smoke, the smell that had lived in the curtains since his father's time, and which his wife, Helena, had once asked very softly if he might confine to the library. He had told her with an indulgent smile that a house must smell like the man who owns it. The hall no longer smelled like him. He looked toward the grand staircase. Flowers filled the niche beneath his mother's portrait. White roses. His mother had hated white roses. Helena loved them. Or perhaps she had simply worn them at their wedding, and Edmund had forgotten to ask if she loved them. From the drawing-room came another burst of laughter. Not loud. Worse. Comfortable. His guests were comfortable in his house before he had entered it. "Announce me," he said. The footman opened the drawing-room doors. Conversation did not stop immediately. That was the fourth insult. A lesser man might not have noticed the half-second delay. Edmund noticed. He noticed the way heads turned, not with surprise but expectation, as if everyone in the room had been waiting for a scene already discussed before he arrived. His Grace, the Duke of Blackthorn. Now the room quieted. Edmund entered. There were 15 people in the drawing-room. His nearest neighbour, Lord Pelham. Lady Sybil March, whose tongue had ruined 3 engagements and improved every dinner she attended. The vicar and his wife. 2 tenants of respectable standing. Mr. Norcross, the family solicitor. Sir Ansel Reed, a magistrate. His wife's cousin, Mrs. Adele Crane, the physician. The retired colonel from across the valley, and near the fire, sitting in the chair that had always been his, was Helena. The Duchess of Blackthorn did not rise. She was dressed in pearl grey silk, with no jewels except a small emerald ring he had never given her. Her hair was arranged simply. Her hands rested on the arms of the chair. She looked neither angry nor relieved. She looked prepared. That frightened him before he knew why. "Edmund," she said. "Not my lord, not your Grace, Edmund." The guests watched him receive the name like a verdict. "My dear," he said, crossing the room with the easy confidence that had carried him through worse entrances. "I had not expected the pleasure of company." No, Helena said. I imagine you had not. Lady Sybil lowered her fan. We were just discussing the lake, Your Grace. Her Grace has had the banks repaired beautifully. The lake banks? Edmund repeated. Yes, said Lord Pelham. A necessary improvement. Quite overdue. Edmund looked at Helena. You had the lake repaired. I had the dangerous side secured. Without writing to me, I wrote. The two words landed more sharply than accusation. He removed his hat slowly. I have been travelling. Yes, she said. That was included in several of the letters. A polite silence followed. It was not the silence of guests embarrassed by marital tension. It was the silence of witnesses listening for consistency. Edmund sensed it then, not fully, only the shape of it. Something had been arranged. He smiled. The season lasted longer than expected. Lady Sybil's fan stilled. The vicar's wife looked down. Helena did not blink. So I understand. The name was not spoken. Miss Tamsin Rowe, actress, widow depending on who asked, beauty depending on light. Mistress, if anyone in the room was honest enough to use the word. Edmund had taken her to Bath in May, Brighton in June, and into Kent in July. By August, half the county knew. By September, apparently, his wife had changed the house. He turned toward the fireplace, intending to reclaim his chair. Helena did not move. A footman quietly placed another chair for him near the side, near but not beside, off-centre. The chair of a visiting uncle. Not the master. Edmund looked at it, then at his wife. The room waited. He sat. A man who refuses a chair in public gives the chair too much power. How long will our guests remain, he asked. Through dinner. Only dinner. For some. And for others, Helena lifted her teacup. That will depend on what they hear. The vicar's wife made a small sound and covered it with a cough. Edmund's smile thinned. What a mysterious house I have returned to. Yes, Helena said. It has kept several mysteries in your absence. Before he could answer, a door opened at the far end of the room. A child ran in. Edmund turned. The boy stopped when he saw him. Arthur, his son, 8 years old, taller, thinner, dressed in a dark blue coat, hair brushed too neatly, one hand holding a wooden boat. Edmund had not seen him since spring. The boy looked at his mother first, not his father. That was the fifth insult. No, not insult, consequence. Helena said gently, Arthur, His Grace has arrived. His Grace, not your father. Edmund felt something shift under his ribs. The boy bowed. Good evening, sir. Sir. The word crossed the room and struck him harder than any accusation might have done. Edmund stood. Too quickly. Arthur. The boy looked at him with polite caution, not fear, not affection, caution. The kind children learn around adults who arrive like weather. I have been working on the boat, Arthur said, because children sometimes fill unbearable rooms with simple facts. Edmund looked at the toy. It is fine. Arthur waited. Edmund realised too late he should say more. Helena did not help him. The boy turned back to his mother. May I show Mrs. Crane? After dinner, perhaps. Am I to dine? No, you will take supper in the nursery. Arthur nodded. He bowed again, this time to the room, and left. The door closed. Edmund remained standing. No one looked at him. That was their courtesy. It was also the wound. He sat slowly. Helena turned to Mrs. Adele Crane. About the West Cottage School? Yes, Mrs. Crane said, recovering. I was. Conversation resumed. Not easily, but deliberately. Edmund listened. They spoke of lake repairs, school funds, the widow Perrin's roof, the new tenant agreement, the rebuilt footbridge, the doctor's visits paid through the estate. All matters he should have known. All matters he did not. Every sentence revealed a room of his own house he had not entered. And Helena sat at the centre of it, answering clearly, naming dates, figures, people, repairs, debts, and decisions. He had once thought her quiet because she had nothing to say. Now he understood she had been quiet because he had not asked questions worth answering. At 7:30, the dinner bell rang. The guests rose. Edmund offered Helena his arm out of habit. She looked at it. then accepted Lord Pelham's instead. The movement was small. The room saw it. Edmund lowered his arm. Dinner awaited. The dining room had been rearranged. He saw it at once. At the head of the table sat Helena's place card. At the foot sat his. It's between them, the guests. Not random, never random. Helena had made a map of the room, Lord Pelham beside her. Sir Ansell Reed near the centre, Mr. Norcross opposite the magistrate, the physician beside the vicar, the tenant representatives placed where they could be seen, not hidden. Lady Sybil near Edmund, close enough to hear him mutter, and cruel enough to remember it accurately. Edmund looked down the table. His own name sat at the foot. Not even his grace, only Edmund Vale. He touched the card. Helena watched him. You have changed the seating. Yes, my place is at the head. Tonight, your place is where your conduct has placed you. No one moved. Then Helena sat. The room followed her. Soup was served. Onion soup. He disliked onion soup. Helena knew this. He remembered telling her once, in their second year, that onion soup was food for people who had failed at elegance. She had liked onion soup. He had never seen it served again, until tonight. He lifted the spoon. The first course had begun. So had the trial. At first, Edmund tried to eat. That was the last dignity available to him. A man may lose command of his house, his wife's welcome, his son's affection, and still lift a spoon as if soup were the matter at hand. But the onion soup tasted of memory, not the warm kind, the kind that returns with witnesses. Helena waited until every guest had taken several spoonfuls. Then she set down her spoon. The sound was small. The entire table heard it. Lord Pelham, she said, would you tell his grace what you told me in June? Edmund looked up. Lord Pelham cleared his throat. I wrote to you twice. Blackthorn. About the lake bank. Edmund looked toward Helena. She said nothing. Pelham continued. A boy from the village slipped there in May. No lasting harm, thank God. But it could have been grave. Her Grace had the bank repaired within the week. Edmund frowned. I received no such letters, Helena said. You received them. I did not. Mr. Norcross opened a small leather folder. Edmund's eyes went to it. There it was, paper. He had begun to hate paper. Norcross placed 2 letters beside Edmund's plate. The seals were broken, by him. He remembered now. One had arrived in Bath while Tamsin was choosing gloves. He had skimmed the first line, seen the word lake, and handed it to his valet to pack with other estate trifles. The second had come in Brighton. Tamsin had read the address aloud and asked whether his wife always wrote like a vicar's widow. He had laughed and left the letter unopened until morning, or afternoon, or never. He did not touch the letters. Helena said, You may open them, though it is late. Lady Sybil's eyes gleamed. Edmund opened the first. Pelham had written clearly. The bank was dangerous. Children crossed there. Immediate attention required. He opened the second. More urgent. He folded both letters. I was not aware of the seriousness. No, Helena said. That is why Lord Pelham is here. Edmund's gaze moved around the table. The first guest had become the first witness. The fish arrived. Beside the fish came Mrs. Barlow, one of the tenant representatives. A woman of 50 with rough hands, careful posture, and a plain black dress that had been brushed to dignity. Helena turned to her. Mrs. Barlow, would you speak of the West Cottages? The woman looked uncomfortable. Edmund almost felt relief. Surely this woman would not condemn him in his own dining room. Then she lifted her chin. The roof's leaked, Your Grace. I was not told. You were told by petition. Mr. Norcross placed another paper beside his plate. Edmund did not open it. He already knew the shape of it. Mrs. Barlow continued. Her Grace came herself after the second rain. She stood in Widow Perrin's room, with water in 3 bowls, and said the roof would be repaired before the week was out. Helena said. It was. With Her Grace's money, Mrs. Barlow added. Edmund's hand tightened around his fork. My money maintains this estate. The table went still. Helena looked at him. No, she said. Your name owns it. Other people have maintained it. The sentence was quiet. No one defended him, because no one could. The third course arrived. Roast capon. Sir Ansell Reed, the magistrate, placed his glass down. Edmund felt cold. You too.
Sir Ansell?
The magistrate's expression was calm. I am here because Her Grace believed certain matters might require accurate memory. Accurate memory, Edmund repeated. Yes, rooms such as these often alter facts by morning. Lady Sybil murmured, only when the wine is good. No one laughed. Helena said, Sir Ansell, please speak of the inn account. Edmund's face changed. The inn account. He had forgotten. No, he had chosen not to remember. Sir Ansell said, in July, an account from the White Hart Inn was charged to Blackthorn estate credit. Edmund leaned back. I stayed there briefly. No, Helena said. The word cut through him. You did not. Miss Tamsin Rowe stayed there under your protection. The mistress's name entered the room at last. Not shouted, placed. Like a knife on the table. The vicar's wife looked down. Lady Sybil did not. Sir Ansell continued. The innkeeper, believing the charge authorised, billed the estate. The amount was significant. Edmund's voice hardened. Is this why you brought guests? To discuss tavern bills? Helena looked at him. No. To discuss what the tavern bill concealed. He felt the first real fear then. Not embarrassment. Fear. Mr. Norcross produced another paper. Edmund stared. Helena said, the White Hart account included payments to 2 men who are not servants of the inn. Sir Ansell added, men known locally for collecting debts by pressure. Edmund turned sharply. That has nothing to do with me. No, Helena said. That is why all Saul's still sitting. The words struck strangely. For the first time she had not accused him. She had spared him. Or separated him from something worse, Sir Ansell continued. Those men were paid 3 days before Mr. Fenwick disappeared. Edmund looked up. Fenwick, his former steward. He had been told Fenwick left service abruptly after stealing from the estate. Helena watched him closely. You remember Mr. Fenwick? Of course. Do you remember dismissing him? Yes. When? He stopped. The room waited. I signed the dismissal in August. From where? He looked at the plate. Brighton. Helena nodded to Mr. Norcross. The solicitor placed the dismissal before him. Edmund saw his signature, large, impatient. He remembered signing it. A packet of estate papers had arrived. Tamsin had wanted to go driving. His uncle, Lord Cresswell, had written that Fenwick had been discovered dishonest, and that swift dismissal would avoid scandal. Edmund had signed. He had not asked what Fenwick stole. He had not asked where he went. He had not asked why Helena's letter, sent the same week, had warned him Fenwick had found irregularities. Helena said, Mr. Fenwick did not steal. The food in Edmund's stomach turned cold. Where is he? No one answered. That was answer enough. The physician, Dr. Avell, spoke. He was found in October. Edmund's eyes moved to him. Found? In a cottage near the northern road. Ill injured. Afraid to return. This remained safe, no graphic details. But clear. Edmund's voice lowered. Who did it? Helena said. That is what tonight is for. The 4th course arrived, but no one touched it. The guests had become witnesses one by one. The neighbour, the tenant, the magistrate, the solicitor, the physician. Edmund looked down the table at his wife. Who arranged this? I did. Alone. No. With whom? She looked toward the doors. At that moment, the dining room doors opened. A woman entered in a pale rose gown, with a dark cloak still damp from rain. Tamsin Rowe, his mistress. The room inhaled. Edmund stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. What is she doing here? Helena looked at Tamsin, taking her place. Tamsin's face was pale beneath the candlelight. No rouge, no painted charm, no bright laugh. She looked younger without performance and frightened enough to be honest. She curtsied to Helena, not to Edmund. Your Grace. Helena inclined her head. Miss Rowe. Edmund stared at his wife. You invited her. Yes. Why? Helena's eyes did not leave him. Because you changed guests into secrets. I changed them into witnesses. Tamsin moved to the empty chair beside Sir Ansell. A chair Edmund had not noticed was empty until now. The 16th place, the hidden place, the true Whitner. Edmund sank slowly back into his seat. Tamsin did not look at him. Helena said gently, "Miss Rowe, you may begin with the letter." Tamsin opened her reticule with trembling fingers and removed a folded sheet sealed in black wax. Edmund recognised the seal. Lord Cresswell's. His uncle, his adviser. The man who had handled estate business in Edmund's absence. Tamsin placed the letter on the table. "I was told to burn it," she said. Helena's voice remained calm. "And why did you not?" Tamsin looked at Edmund for the first time. "Because he called me a pretty fool." No one spoke. Tamsin's mouth tightened. Men say many things when they think a woman is too vain to listen. Helena nodded. "Yes, they do, mister." Norcross opened the letter. "Read." His expression changed. Then he passed it to Sir Ansell. The magistrate read more slowly. Edmund could not bear it. "What does it say?" Helena answered. "It says Lord Cresswell arranged the White Hart payments. It says Fenwick knew too much. It says Miss Rowe was to keep you amused in Brighton until the northern accounts were altered. It says, if necessary, your letters could be managed because you rarely read anything longer than an invitation." The room went silent. That last line was not merely accusation. It was his portrait. Edmund looked at Tamsin. "You knew?" "No," she said quickly. "Not then. I thought he wanted me to keep you away because your wife was suspicious." Helena's face remained still. "And now," Tamsin lowered her eyes. "Now I know I was hired." The word hung there. Hired, not loved, not cherished, not adored. Hired. Edmund felt shame move through him. But not the shame he expected. Not shame at being exposed with a mistress. Worse. Shame at seeing that even his sin had been less romantic than he had imagined. He had not been a passionate man breaking rules. He had been a useful fool kept entertained while others robbed his house. Helena looked at him. He knew she saw that thought arrive. She did not comfort him. The final course was brought in. No dessert. A locked iron box. Mrs. Vell, the old housekeeper, carried it herself. Edmund stared at her. "You are here too." Mrs. Vethel set the box beside Helena. "I have always been here, Your Grace. You were not always observant." Lady Sybil's fan snapped shut. "Excellent." Helena unlocked the box. Inside were ledgers, letters, tenant lists, and one small velvet pouch. She removed the pouch. Edmund already knew he did not want to see what was inside. She opened it. A signet ring fell into her palm. His seal. Or a copy of it. The magistrate leaned forward. Helena said, "Lord Cresswell has been signing in your name." Edmund's vision narrowed. "How long, mister?" Norcross said quietly, "At least 11 months. And I did not know." Helena looked at him. No, the word should have been accusation. Instead, it was worse. It was simple. Tamsin whispered, "He plans to come tonight." Edmund turned. "What?" Tamsin swallowed. "He believes Her Grace invited us to shame you. He told me to attend, make a scene, provoke jealousy, and leave before the truth emerged. He said, once the house party became scandal, he would arrive to restore order." At the far end of the table, Helena lifted her glass. "Then we must not disappoint him." As if summoned by the sentence, the front doors opened somewhere in the hall. Voices sounded. Footsteps approached. The dining room doors opened. Lord Cresswell entered, smiling. "My dear nephew," he said, "what a lively evening you have made of your return." Then he saw the table, the witnesses, the mistress, the iron box, the copied seal in Helena's hand, and his smile died before the soup had gone cold. Lord Cresswell recovered almost instantly. That was why he had survived so long. A guilty fool panics. A guilty nobleman smiles.
Cresswell looked around the dining room as if he had arrived late to a performance he found mildly
disappointing. "My dear Helena," he said, bowing with perfect courtesy, "you should have told me there was to be theatre." Helena did not rise. "No theatre, my lord. Only testimony." His gaze moved to Edmund. Something like pity crossed his face, as it was false. That did not make it less effective. "Nephew," he said, "you look unwell." Edmund stood. For once, he did not know whether he rose as duke, husband, accused man, or fool, perhaps all four. "Did you forge my seal?" Cresswell's eyebrows lifted. "Is that what they are saying?" "No," Helena said. "That is what the documents are saying. People are only here to remember you hearing it." Lady Sybil whispered. "I shall remember beautifully." Sir Ansell Reed stood. "Lord Cresswell, please sit." Cresswell glanced at him. "By whose authority?" "Mine," said the magistrate. "And by whose invitation?" "Mine," said Helena. Cresswell looked back at her. His smile was delicate. "You have become bold in your husband's absence." Helena's gaze did not move. No, only visible. That quiet answer unsettled him more than anger would have done. He sat. Mr. Norcross began reading. He read the altered accounts first. Northern timber sold below value to a company secretly tied to Cresswell. Tenant rents raised and diverted. Repairs delayed. Fenwick dismissed after discovering the irregularities. Payments through the White Hart. Letters intercepted. Copies of Edmund's seal. Every item had a date. Every date had a witness. Every witness sat at dinner. The guests were no longer people. They were locks closing. Cresswell listened with increasing stillness. At the end he smiled again. Unfortunate. But not criminal unless intent is proven. Tamsin Rowe spoke from her chair. "You wrote that Fenwick knew too much." Cresswell looked at her as one might look at a dog that had learned to sit at table. "My dear girl, you were not invited to understand correspondence." Tamsin's face flushed, but she did not lower her eyes. "I was invited tonight." Helena looked at her with the faintest approval. Cresswell saw it. His mouth tightened. "You think she respects you?" he said to Tamsin. "You were her husband's amusement." Tamsin flinched, then steadied. "Yes," she said, "and you were his parasite. We are all being named tonight." The room changed. Edmund looked at her. For the first time he saw Tamsin without the soft glow of vanity and secrecy. She had been foolish. Yes. Selfish. Yes. But she had not been the mastermind of his ruin. She had been another room Cresswell used. Helena turned to Mrs. Vell. The old housekeeper stepped forward. "My lord," she said to Cresswell, "do you remember dismissing my nephew from the stable?" Cresswell's expression sharpened. "No, his name was Owen. I dismiss many servants." "Yes," Mrs. Vell said, "that is why I kept the letters." Cresswell's smile vanished. Mrs. Vell placed 3 folded notes on the table. "Your notes to him, asking him to watch Mr. Fenwick, asking him to report when His Grace's letters came in, asking him to remove certain packets before Her Grace could see them." Cresswell stared. "You stole private correspondence." Mrs. Vell looked at him. "No, my lord, I collected what you forgot servants can read." Lady Sybil breathed. "Wonderful woman." Cresswell turned toward Edmund. "You will not allow servants to accuse your blood." Edmund looked at him. Blood. The word had worked on him for years. Blood meant loyalty. Blood meant tradition. Blood meant family. Blood had also meant silence, debt, carelessness, and stolen authority. "My blood," Edmund said slowly, "has done this house very little good tonight." Cresswell's eyes narrowed. "You speak with her voice now." Edmund looked at Helena. "No, I am trying to find my own after wasting it on yours." For the first time, Helena's expression shifted. Only slightly, but Edmund saw it. Cresswell did too, and because desperate men cannot resist cruelty, he struck where he could. "You think she arranged this for justice?" he said. "She arranged it because you humiliated her with that woman." He gestured at Tamsin. "She wanted spectacle. She wanted you small. She wanted your mistress at the table so the county would pity her and laugh at you." Edmund turned to Helena, not because he believed Cresswell, because he needed to hear her. Helena's face remained calm. "Yes," she said. The room froze. Edmund felt the word enter him. Helena continued. "At first, yes, silence. I wanted Miss Rowe to sit where I had imagined her sitting in my worst hours. I wanted Edmund to look from her face to mine and understand something of exposure. I wanted everyone who had whispered about my patience to witness its end. Tamsin lowered her head. Edmund did not breathe. Then Helena looked at Cresswell, and then Miss Rowe wrote to me. Edmund turned to Tamsin. She did not look up. Helena said, "She wrote because you frightened her, because you called her foolish once too often, because she had kept a letter she was told to burn, because even vanity has a point at which it recognizes danger." Tamsin whispered, "I did not expect you to answer." "No," Helena said. "Men taught both of us that women in our positions should not answer one another honestly." Cresswell scoffed. "How touching." Helena looked at him. "That was your mistake." Went still. "You thought the wife and the mistress would destroy one another before either noticed the man behind the curtain." The room held that sentence. Even Edmund felt the architecture of it. The real twist was not merely that Cresswell had stolen. It was that his entire plan depended on women obeying the roles men had assigned them. Wife silent, mistress vain, servants invisible. Guests decorative. He had mistaken every person in the room, and Helena had turned each mistake into a witness. Sir Ansell stood fully. "Lord Cresswell, I must ask you to accompany me." Cresswell's face hardened. "You have no warrant." "Not yet," the magistrate said. "But I have sufficient sworn statements to require your presence until one is written." Cresswell stood. "Would drag appear from his nephew's table?" Lady Sybil said. "No, my lord, from his niece-in-law's table. Do keep up." No one smiled. But several wanted to. Cresswell's eyes moved to Edmund. "This will ruin your name." Edmund looked down the table at Helena. The woman he had left behind. The woman whose letters he had ignored. The woman who had taken his guests and made them tell the truth. Then he looked back at his uncle. "No," he said, "it will explain it." Cresswell was taken out through the dining room doors. No one followed. For a long moment the room remained still. Then the vicar's wife began crying quietly. Mrs. Barlow reached for her hand. The physician removed his spectacles. Lady Sybil poured herself wine. Tamsin sat rigidly, as if movement would turn her back into the woman everyone expected her to be. Edmund sat down. He had not realized he was still standing. Helena rang the bell. The servants entered. "Dessert may be served," she said. Lord Pelham stared at her. "Dessert?" Helena looked at him. "Yes. Cook has been waiting all evening. Justice should not be allowed to ruin a lemon tart, and strangely, because people are human even after revelation, dessert was served. Some ate, some could not. Lady Sybil ate 2 slices. After dinner, the witnesses left one by one. Not guests now, witnesses still. Each bowed to Helena first. Some bowed to Edmund after. Some did not. Tamsin was the last among them. She stood near the drawing-room door in a borrowed cloak, looking smaller than when she entered and more real. "I will leave tonight," she said. Helena shook her head. "No, the roads are wet. You will stay in the east room tomorrow, Mr. Norcross will arrange protection if Lord Cresswell attempts to blame you." Tamsin stared. "Why would you help me?" Helena's face did not soften. "Because I know what it is to be used by a man who calls it care." Tamsin looked at Edmund. He bowed his head. "I wronged you." She gave a tired laugh. "Yes, but not as beautifully as you imagined." He accepted that. "I am sorry. Do not say it because she is here." He looked at her directly. "I am sorry because you were not loved. You were kept. There is a difference. And I made the uglier thing look like tenderness." Tamsin's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. "Good night, Your Grace." She curtsied to Helena, then left. At last Edmund and Helena were alone in the dining room. The candles had burned low. The plates had been cleared. The place cards remained. Helena at the head, Edmund at the foot. The distance between them looked longer than the table. He spoke first. "You invited them all before you knew about Cresswell." "Yes. To shame me, yes." The honesty hurt more than denial. "And after?" "After I needed them to remember, because you thought I would deny it." "No," she said, "because I thought by morning you might persuade yourself it had been less than it was." He lowered his eyes. She knew him, better than he deserved. "What do you want of me?" he asked. Helena leaned back. The question seemed to tire her. "I wanted many things once." He waited. "I wanted you to come home, before being summoned by embarrassment. I wanted you to read my letters. I wanted you to know your son's laugh without needing to be introduced to it. I wanted you to ask whether I was lonely before the county began answering for me." Every sentence landed softly, every sentence wounded. "And now?" he asked. "Now I want the estate repaired, Lord Cresswell prosecuted, Arthur protected from scandal as much as possible, Miss Rowe sent somewhere safe enough to be forgotten kindly, and you out of my rooms." He closed his eyes. Yes, she stood. He stood too. Not quickly, not as master, as witness. She looked at him across the table. "You will not perform remorse for the servants, no. You will not turn Miss Rowe into proof of your generosity. No, you will not use your uncle's betrayal to make yourself innocent." The sharpest condition. He looked at her. No, she watched him. Good, that was all. But it was more than silence. The weeks that followed were not dramatic enough for gossip, which made them harder to endure. Cresswell's papers were opened, his accounts exposed, his allies named. Men who had praised his prudence now recalled they had always found him suspicious. Women who had welcomed him to dinner now remembered prior engagements. Creditors arrived with memories sharpened by opportunity. Edmund read everything. Slowly at first, then obsessively. Helena did not praise him. Reading what he should have read years ago was not virtue, it was arrears. He visited the lake bank, the repaired school, the west cottages, the northern fields where timber had been sold too cheaply. He stood in Widow Perrin's room, beneath a roof Helena had paid to mend, and saw the stain on the ceiling where rain had once come through. "You must have been cold," he said. The widow looked at him. "We were, your grace, not cruelly, worse, simply." He went home quieter. Arthur still called him Sir, at first. Then in November, the boy asked whether he might walk with him to see the boat on the lake. Edmund looked at Helena. She did not help him. Good, he needed to answer as himself. "I would like that very much," he said. Arthur nodded gravely. The boat sank in the reeds within 10 minutes. Arthur was devastated. Edmund removed his boots, stepped into the cold shallows, and retrieved it while his son watched with solemn approval. That night Helena ordered hot bricks sent to his room. Not hers, his. He did not mistake the gesture for forgiveness. He received it as mercy and made no speech. Tamsin left for a small cottage near the coast under another name. Before she departed, she wrote Helena a note. Helena read it once, then placed it in the fire. Edmund did not ask what it said. In December, the first snow came. The house party was spoken of in the county for weeks, then months, then softened into legend. People called it the witness dinner. Helena hated the phrase. Lady Sybil used it constantly. At Christmas, Helena held another dinner. 12 guests, not 15, no magistrate, no hidden mistress, no iron box. Edmund's place card sat not at the head and not at the foot, but to Helena's right. He stood behind the chair for a moment. Helena noticed. "Is something wrong?" "No. You may sit elsewhere." He looked at the card. "No. This is where I have been placed. And," he pulled out the chair, "I am learning not to confuse placement with insult." She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "That is useful." It was not warmth, but it was not ice. Dinner was quieter. Conversation moved through safe subjects, then useful ones. Repairs, weather, Arthur's lessons, the school roof, a new tenant agreement. No one mentioned Cresswell until Lady Sybil did, because Lady Sybil believed restraint was what other people were for. "I hear your uncle has taken poorly to confinement," she said. Edmund set down his glass. "I imagine confinement has taken poorly to him." Helena looked at him, then unexpectedly she laughed, only once, softly. But the table heard it. Arthur, dining with them for the first time, looked delighted. "Mamma laughed," he said. "Yes," Edmund said. Arthur looked at him. "You made her." Edmund met Helena's eyes. No, he said. She chose to. Helena looked down at her plate, but she did not correct him. Later, after the guests departed, Edmund found Helena in the drawing room beside the fire, the same room where he had first returned, and found her in his chair. He stood near the door. "May I come in?" She did not look up from her book. "You are already in. I can leave." A pause, then she closed the book on her finger. "You may stay." He entered, not too far. The fire burned with orange peel in it, he noticed. "I used to think the house changed while I was away." Helena looked at him. "It did, yes. But not because it betrayed me. No, because someone was living in it." Her face shifted, only slightly. "Enough." He said, "I am sorry I made your patience necessary." She did not answer for a while. Then she said, "I am sorry I first gathered the guests to wound you." He looked at her. "You told the truth." "I did. But truth can be carried with different intentions." He had no defense against such honesty, so he offered none. "What changed?" he asked. She looked at the fire. "Miss Rowe's letter." He nodded. "And perhaps Arthur," she added. That surprised him. "Arthur?" "He asked me, the morning before you arrived, whether fathers were guests when they came home." Edmund looked away. The sentence hollowed him. Helena continued, "I realised then that if I made the dinner only revenge, he would inherit another silence. And now? Now he may inherit a warning." Edmund looked at her. "About what? That love without attention becomes absence. That power without reading becomes danger. And that guests may become witnesses when the people inside a house forget to tell the truth." The room was quiet. He bowed his head. "I will remember." "No," Helena said gently. "You will practice. Memory has never been enough for you." He almost smiled. Not because it was light, because it was exact. Spring returned slowly. The pale gravel darkened after rain and dried white again. The lake held, the school roof held, the west cottages held. Arthur's boat, after repair, floated badly but proudly. Edmund remained at Blackthorn. No one applauded him for it. Staying was not heroism, it was fatherhood, it was marriage. If Helena ever chose to allow that word again in any form warmer than law. One afternoon he found her at the lake bank, watching Arthur sail the crooked boat. He stood beside her at a respectful distance. "He calls me father now," he said. "I know." He asked if you told him to. "I did not. No." The wind moved across the water. Helena's gloved hand rested on the fence rail. After a long silence, she said, "I hated you in September." He took the words without flinching. "Yes. I hated you when Tamsin entered. Yes. I hated you less when you did not make her carry all the blame." He looked at her. "That is not a fine recommendation." "No," she said. "It is what exists." He accepted that. Arthur shouted from the bank below. "The boat is turning. It is sinking," Edmund called back. "It is not sinking, it is thinking." Helena's mouth moved, almost a smile. Edmund looked at the water. "I do not ask forgiveness. No? No, not yet." "When then?" "When asking would not be of making you comfort me." She turned to him. For a moment she looked almost startled. Then the expression softened into something he did not dare name. "That is the first sensible thing you have said all day." He bowed his head. "I shall try not to ruin it," Arthur shouted again. The boat, against reason and design, remained afloat. Helena watched it. After a while, her hand shifted on the rail, not toward him, not away, only enough to make room. Edmund placed his hand beside hers. He did not touch. She did not move away. And for that afternoon, beside a repaired lake, with a crooked boat refusing to sink, that was enough. So let us leave them there, dear listener. Not at the first dinner, where the Duke came home from a season with his young mistress and found that every guest had been invited to remember his shame. Not at the table where the neighbour, the tenant, the magistrate, the solicitor, the physician, the servant, and the mistress herself became witnesses. Not even at the door where Lord Cresswell entered smiling and discovered that the wife he had dismissed as quiet had turned the room into a court. Let us leave them by the lake, with the woman who learned that patience is not the same as surrender, with the mistress who discovered she had been used and still chose to tell the truth, with the duke who finally understood that the worst betrayal was not that his uncle forged his name, add to basket, but that he had lived so carelessly a forged name could govern his house for nearly a year, and with a child whose boat stayed afloat because, this time, the adults repaired the bank before the water took him. If you have ever been called quiet by someone who mistook your silence for emptiness, then you know Helena. If you have ever been used as a distraction in someone else's game and found the courage to become a witness, then you know Tamsin. And if you have ever come home expecting welcome and found instead the truth seated around your table, then perhaps you know Edmund too. Tell me, which moment stayed with you? The guests refusing to rise, the son calling his father sir, the mistress entering as the hidden witness, or Lord Cresswell arriving just in time for his own ruin? Draw your chair closer for the next story. The candles are low, the witnesses have gone. But somewhere, in another great house, a quiet woman is writing the invitations.